I just don't find it to be practical. So I think you'd be much better off buying a Birkin 40 if you like an oversized look, but dare I say maybe even a Birkin 35. Hey guys, my name is G.P.S. and welcome back. A few weeks ago I did a buy this not that style video, which most of you seem to really enjoy. So today we're going back to the same idea, but rather than looking at any designer bag out there, we'll be discussing alternatives to some of the most popular Hermes pieces, including bags, accessories, as well as jewelry. Pieces that I feel are more special than the mainstream Hermes pieces that you see out there. And at the end of the day, I feel any one of these would give you just more bang for your buck. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with a category rather than just one specific product, which I don't think you want to spend too much money on, which is fashion jewelry. Now, I understand that fashion jewelry does have a time and a place. I think you can add quite a bit of statement to your collection and a lot of value by owning one of these pieces. But there is your keyword, by owning one of these pieces. You don't need 10 different variations of the same style of fashion jewelry. So owning one CDC, something that makes quite a bit of statement, or a CDC 24, depending on what style you prefer. I have an entire video comparing the two. And then owning something that is a little bit more simplistic, like a double tour bracelet. In my case, the Be Happy is my favorite. I think is like having it all. Yes, the CDC comes in a huge array of different colors and leathers. Yes, you can pick up the CDC 24 now in different colors and so many different leathers as well. But you don't need too many of them. At the end of the day, it just becomes redundant. Yes, if you wear these on a regular basis, it's nice to have them maybe in two different colors, one that's a black and then maybe one that's more of a pop of color, or one that's more of a neutral. And yes, you can add different double toe bracelets to your collection, but I think they're not going to add different facets to your collection. If you're at the beginning of your Hermes journey and you don't want to go overboard and spend a crazy amount of money, I think you can do much better than focusing all your budget in on these pieces. So I would say that if you're going to buy fashion jewelry, I would just kind of decide what's more your style. Are you someone who needs to make more of a statement with your outfit? Do you like a more plain outfit that you'd like to add a pop, a piece that adds a pop to? In which case I would go for the CDC. You can never go wrong with these. Although if you'd find these to be a little bit overwhelming, you can absolutely opt for the CDC 24, which you might like if you are into stacking as well. But as I mentioned, I have an entire video comparing the two. If I had to choose between these two, in my case, I would probably go for... It's a really tough one because I like these equally, but for different reasons and for different occasions. I would probably go for the CDC just because it's such an iconic piece, but it doesn't mean that I don't absolutely adore this. And I have to say I have been reaching for this more often, but if I could only pick one, I would go for the CDC because it does give you a lot of bang for your buck. So I think adding one statement piece is a great idea, and then you could absolutely buy something that is more simplistic down the line. You don't have to buy them at the same time or even close to each other. But something like a double toe bracelet could be a great idea. Something simple that you can throw on with any outfit just to add something to tie your ensemble together. I love the Be Happy. It has to be probably my favorite sort of family of double toe bracelets. Obviously, these come in a huge array of different colors and even variations. But I think having the Be Happy, if you have one of these, you don't have to get a Kelly double toe. You don't have to get a Rival double toe. All of them are going to do the same thing. Yes, if you look at them closely, they will obviously feature different hardwares. But when it comes to looking at your outfit as a whole, they'll pretty much do the same thing. So in my opinion, having a couple, one or two fashion jewelry pieces is pretty much like having it all if you take a look at your overall collection. The pieces that I would much rather have you or have myself invest in, however, is Hermes's fine jewelry. I have talked about Hermes's fine jewelry before. I've even done a dedicated video on them, so I'll make sure to have that linked up here. And in case you've seen that video, I don't want to be repetitive, but long story short, I think Hermes's fine jewelry is one of the most underrated métier. When we talk about designer fine jewelry, a lot of people immediately go to Tiffany or Cartier or Van Cleef. And while I do love most of those brands and they do create some incredible pieces, I find myself appreciating and reaching for Hermes's fine jewelry much more often. I find their pieces to be not as overdone. And if you ask me where to start, I would highly recommend that you look at their rings. I think their rings are the pieces that will get you the most bang for your buck and the biggest wow factor if you look at how much you have to spend on them. Now, obviously, they have a huge array of rings from different styles and different ranges. I would look at the entire collection and try to pinpoint which style you like the most. You can go for the CDC, you can go for the Chandon, you can go for the Kelly, you can go for the Gallop, just to mention a few that I do really appreciate. And each one of these have different rings in different price ranges that I think you would really enjoy. So when it comes to the buy this, not that factor, I would say don't buy fashion jewelry or don't buy too much of it and spend your money on fine jewelry, not only because of the value and how long they're going to last in your collection, because obviously fine jewelry is never going to fall apart, it's never going to tarnish and age, obviously as long as you take care of them well, but they technically shouldn't, but also because of the amount of value that they add to your collection. Yes, these can add some great wow factor to a really simple outfit, but having one of these I think is pretty much all you need, and then the rest, if it's fine jewelry, I think you'll find yourself appreciating it more long term. Next up, let's talk about one of the most controversial Hermes pieces that divides Hermes lovers, which is the Hermes Rodeo. This is one of those pieces that some Hermes lovers absolutely love and cannot get enough of, while others cannot stand them and they find them cheap looking. I find myself going through phases. Some seasons I'm really into them and I cannot wait for Hermes to come out with new colorways. At the moment, I haven't really been finding myself lusting after these or even reaching for them. And I haven't even seen a designer colorway that really got me excited. Obviously, the Rodeo Touch was one that was kind of intriguing, but honestly, I don't think I'll be adding it to my collection at the end of the day because, yeah, I'm just not in the mood right now. It might change, I might regret it, but not at the moment. But if you don't like these designs or you don't want to spend too much money on these, which I can completely understand, then one thing that I would recommend that you look into is Hermes' necklaces. And I know I just said that you shouldn't spend too much money on fashion jewelry, which I still stand by. But I think if you can use it as many different things and if it becomes a multi-purpose piece, it is one of those few pieces that I think could add quite a bit of value to your collection. And if you've been looking for a way to personalize and spice up your bags, this could be a good one. And I absolutely love buying Hermes necklaces or an Hermes necklace to add to my bags. This is the Bouclerie necklace, which is essentially just this long leather strap with this really unique looking sort of equestrian inspired pendant, which is made of metal. And I don't know how I came up with using this as a back charm. I just saw it one day on display, or I think it might have been on a mannequin, and I was like, hey, that could look pretty cool as a back charm. I twisted this around the handle of my Birkin that I had with me at the time, and I was immediately sold. And ever since that, every time I take this with me to a boutique on one of my bags, I get so many compliments and questions from everyone working there. So it is definitely a show-stopping and conversation-starting piece. And then another design that I quite like is the O'Kelly pendant, which is a similar idea to this. It is also part of Hermes's leather jewelry collection, but it features a completely different set of characteristics. It is obviously inspired by the Kelly lock, which if you always love the idea of having a lock on your bag, but you never wanted to put it on because you're afraid it will scratch or mark your bag, I think the Kelly O pendant would be a great compromise because you get the lock detail, but the lock is not actually touching your bag because it does have this leather plate behind it. And it is also one of those pieces that one day you can use as a back charm and the necklace the next if you wanted to. The O'Kelly pendant comes in a rainbow of different colors, similar to the Rodeo, so you can find one that you think would complement your collection the best. And in terms of price, I think they're going to be just slightly more expensive than an or PM size Rodeo. I think they're actually quite close to the price of a PM size Rodeo. This I think was around $600, and then the O'Kelly pendant is around 570, or at least it was last time I checked. So you'd be just in between an Rodeo and a GM Rodeo in terms of price. But I think in terms of the effect that they give and the fact that you can not only use these as a back charm but also as a necklace or as a pendant makes these just a little bit more special. And finally, let's move on to bags. Now, I have 3 bags that I would say are a no-go for me that I have much better alternatives to. And the first one is quite a big bag, not only in terms of price, but also in terms of actual size and structure, which is the Hermes HAC. Now, this is a bag that I used to get a crazy amount of questions on, especially from my male viewers, because this is one of those pieces that is often recommended and offered to men when they first get into Hermes. And I have actually been thinking about doing a video on bags for men and where to start your Hermes collection if you are a man who's getting into Hermes. And by no means I think that if you identify as a man, you can only buy pieces from the men's department, or if you identify as a woman, you can strictly go and get pieces from their women's department. I think anyone and everyone should buy pieces that make them happy. So it wouldn't be a video just specifically for men, but I can understand how intimidating it feels if you're a man getting into Hermes and you don't know where to start. So if you like the sound of that video, then do let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I can absolutely do a video on the topic. But the HAC is a piece that is very often recommended to men. And a lot of the time when I get questions from my male viewers about what bag they should go for, they immediately ask about the HAC. And I always say that it really depends on how tall you are and what your frame is and what your preferences are, because the HAC as an everyday bag I don't think is really practical. First of all, it's ridiculously heavy, yes, heavier than even a Birkin 40. And the shape is quite different from the Birkin. A lot of people think that, oh, it's the same thing, it's just a little bit larger. It's not. The HAC is much taller than any Birkin out there. It is just a taller structure. And if you look at the handles are also shorter, which means that there is really only one way for you to carry them, which is handheld, which is exactly the way I would carry my Birkins. I don't usually put them over an arm or anything like that, and they're by no means long enough for me to put them over one shoulder. But if you look at the handles of the HAC, they are quite a bit shorter than the Birkins, which I think makes them a little bit more uncomfortable to wear. And obviously the hardware is also slightly different, but at the end of the day, the HAC is a travel bag and that's where it stops. But even as a travel bag, it's still not the best because it is already so heavy that if you think about what you're going to use a travel bag for, you want to make sure that it not only offers a lot of space, but you can pack it to the brim. And if you pack an HAC full with all your essentials, it's going to be so heavy that it's going to be like training while you're going and walking around at the airport. I just don't find it to be practical. So I think you'd be much better off buying a Birkin 40 if you like an oversized look, but dare I say maybe even a Birkin 35. I know for a fact from personal experience that a Birkin 40 can be drowning and overwhelming on most people unless you're really tall or you love an oversized look. I don't think the Birkin 40 suits most people. Obviously it is personal preference, but I know for a fact on me and on people that I see out there, the Birkin 40 usually just looks out of place. It just usually drowns people. So I think a lot of people would benefit from looking at a Birkin 35 and just giving that size a look. I think it just, in terms of proportions, fits most people out there a lot more. So for me, the HAC is a no-go, not only because of the size, the shape, the structure, and the weight, but also because, let's be honest, most people don't need that much space on a daily basis. And I think you'd be much better off investing in a Birkin 40, or dare I say, maybe even a Birkin 35. The next Hermes bag that just doesn't do it for me is one that is very often recommended as a great entry-level bag to Hermes. In my opinion, it's not, because it doesn't really give you a good understanding of what Hermes is all about, which is the garden party. Now, this is a really simple, sort of stripped down design, which means that I really cannot dislike too much about this bag. But for the price, I would have much higher expectations. I think this is the kind of bag that would just go under the radar, not only in terms of aesthetics, but also in terms of the way it looks. It just doesn't do too much. I feel like you can find a million bags out there for a fraction of the price that do the same thing, if not even more. It's just a bag that is plain and it's boring. There is really not much to it. And for the price, I would want a bag to wow me. So another bag that is in a similar price range, even cheaper, but I think is so much more special from Hermes is the Her bag. And I don't want to go on for too long about the Her bag because I have so many videos talking about it. But I think it's an understated entry-level bag from Hermes that will give you a good understanding of what Hermes is all about in terms of the shape, the structure, the hardware, the different facets that this bag has. I think it's just a much better investment than the garden party. Obviously, they kind of serve different purposes, but if I look at bags that you'd want to use on a regular basis, maybe to take to work or as sort of a bag that you'd use for running errands, I think the Her bag is a much more multifaceted piece that you can dress up or dress down. You can accessorize it and style it in different ways. And if you look at the Her bag, it's interesting, it's unique, you want to know more about it. And you wouldn't necessarily know that it's an Hermes piece because it is quite subtle, but it just looks well put together and elegant, whereas the garden party kind of looks like something you got from a grocery store at the checkout section. So the garden party is the bag that I wouldn't recommend that you go for. It's boring, it's uninspired, and I don't think it adds too much value to anyone's collection. Whereas the Her bag, I think, is incredible. It's an exceptional special design that is a true conversation starter. And whether you are a seasoned Hermes lover or you're brand new to the house, I feel you would enjoy the Her bag regardless. And the last Hermes bag in today's video that I would recommend that you skip is the G.P.S clutch bag in size 29, which is a super simple clutch bag design that's been around since the 1970s. It's been available in a bunch of different colors and sizes as well as leathers. But there's really not too much to this bag. It's a plain leather clutch bag with a leather closure. And there are a couple of things that I don't really like about this bag. For the longest time, I was going back and forth whether I like or dislike this bag, and I could never quite put my finger on what I was missing. But there are two things that I could kind of narrow it down to. One of them is the shape. It is an extremely elongated shape, which means that you would think it suits a more formal outfit, but it is actually just a little bit too large to suit a more formal setting. But it's not quite large enough to work well with a more casual outfit. I think it's just too long and not tall enough to kind of pull off this shape that it's in. There's just something off about the shape, and if you know what I mean, do let me know your thoughts. I don't really know how to put it into words, but there is something off about the proportions. It's just not the most flattering in my opinion. And then the second thing that I dislike about this bag is the hardware. The hardware is made of usually the same leather as the body of the bag is made of, and it is in the shape of an H. Now, I find that if you're going to show off the H, you might as well go all the way, and if you're going to go for a more understated, under the radar look, I think you should go for a different hardware feature than an H. I feel like it's trying to show off, but it doesn't know how to do it in a more elegant and more refined and sophisticated manner. It just kind of fails with that. I think if this bag maybe had a metal hardware to it, something like the Constance hardware, it could be a little bit more interesting, but there's just something missing about this bag. It's not the worst bag that you can buy, but it's definitely not the best, especially for the price, because this bag is, I think, around $3,800 nowadays in regular leather. So for me, the G.P.S is a no-go at this point. And the piece that I would recommend that you buy instead is technically not considered a bag. It's part of Hermes' small leather good line, which is the Kelly wallet. I have so many videos talking about the Kelly wallet and why I love it. I think it's just one of those pieces that if you invest in, it's going to be a large investment, but it's going to worth every single penny. The Kelly wallet was one of my first larger purchases from Hermes, and I wasn't sure if it's worth nearly $4,000 to invest in a wallet. But owning a Kelly wallet and multiple Kelly wallets at this point, I must say that they are some of the most incredible pieces money can buy at Hermes. You can not only use them as a wallet, but you can also use them as a clutch, you can use them as a crossbody bag, you can use them as a shoulder bag. I have an entire video on how you can twist and turn a Kelly to turn it into different pieces, and I think it's just such an amazing bag. It has much more of a wow effect to it than the G.P.S would. And I think if you're going to spend $4,000 on a piece, you want it to have a presence. You want it to add something to your collection and not just be a map piece, something that you can go with or without. It really doesn't matter. Whereas the Kelly piece, I think, is a true statement and a true showstopper. Now, I understand that it's not as large as the G.P.S, so if you'd want to go for something that is more of a true clutch bag size, then you might want to check out the Constance wallet, which is similar to the Kelly wallet, part of the small leather goods range. I think the reason why I never invested and pulled the trigger with a Constance wallet is because of the size. I always felt that it was just a little bit too large to be a wallet, and it works best as a clutch bag. But if you love an oversized bag and you don't need to worry about space and fitting a Constance wallet or a large wallet into a bag, and you love having a larger wallet that fits a lot, you would absolutely love the Constance wallet. Not to mention that it's so much more intricately made than the G.P.S. So I think it's not a piece that you would ever get tired of, whereas the G.P.S. I think you could easily get bored of because there is not much going on, it's just so plain. The Constance wallet is going to be a little bit more expensive depending on what leather you go for. You can expect to pay around $5,000 for it in regular leather, and then the sky's the limit when it comes to exotic pieces. But I think the Constance wallet is quite comparable to G.P.S in terms of what they do, but I think the Constance does even more. But this completes my video today on Hermes pieces that I wouldn't recommend that you buy and some better alternatives, or I should say more special alternatives. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please do let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I would love to hear if you love any one of these pieces that I mentioned as a no-go, or if similar to me, you don't like them and you find that there are better things out there for the money. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.